I'm here to talk about my daughter that passed away in April 27th, and that was 2019. Her name was Ariel Murray. She's everybody's friend. Everybody loved her. She could fit in with any crowd. And, she was just full of life, really. She's old school. She liked all the old music, liked all the old vehicles. She wasn't all about, the trends of the day. It was all about what she wanted to do and what she wanted to wear and how she wanted to, her perception on things were a little different than her age group. When I say old school, like, I'd walk by her bedroom and she'd be in there listening to Eye of the Tiger, something that most teenagers are not going to listen to, singing the song to the top of her lungs. And she just really enjoyed things that I thought were back in my time, So, some of the music that they would make remixes, I'd say, oh, I know that song. And she's like, yeah, that's cool, Mom, because that's what's on the radio nowadays, and they're making mixes of all the old stuff. So, Ariel was my fourth child. I have four girls, and she was the youngest. I didn't really envision myself having a fourth child. But when I married her father, I had a Norplant, which is a form of birth control that lasts 5 years. And after the Norplant was completed, I explained to him that I would have to go back in and either get it reinstalled or move forward with birth control. And he said, let's just take it out and see what happens. And 3 months later, I was pregnant. But, as a child, she was a normal child. Her father and I were married for 7 years. Our relationship did end in divorce. I think she took it very well. She wanted to live with me, but she wanted to spend time with her father, too. My story is not a lot different than most mothers' stories when they have lost their child. But I guess today I had this opportunity to do this before, and I just didn't feel like I could bring myself to do it. And I didn't really know what I wanted to talk about or what I would talk about. But then I started to think that, our focus should be on not just that we've lost our children, but what all of the people go through and how it affects their lives after the child's gone. And it really has affected my life. Not only my life, it has affected her sister's lives, her friends, and I just want mothers out there to know that, if I back this up a little bit, after Ariel passed, everybody goes through their stages of grief, angry, mad, sad, guilt. I did all that too. And the first thing I did is I reached out to some groups, trying to figure out what in the hell was fentanyl. I had never heard of it before, especially back in 2019. It was just starting to become a topic back then. When she had passed away, they suspected an overdose, but we really wasn't sure what it was. And I was thinking maybe, meth, cocaine, when the autopsy report came and it said fentanyl, I was like, what's fentanyl? And how, where did it come from? How did it get in her body? Did she shoot it up? Did she snort it? There was a lot of unanswered questions for me. And so I started researching and going on the internet, trying to find out from other people, what was, how did they find out about the fentanyl? What is fentanyl? Can we figure out, my story, some people have an ending, the person went to jail, the drug dealer went to jail, the drug dealer died. But there's not really an end to my story because I don't know what happened. I don't know who sold it to her. I don't know if she was with somebody and they left her. One thing I do know that God didn't allow me to. He protected me from a lot of things, and what I mean by that is a lot of mothers wake up and find their child in their bed, and that's an awful way. I feel like I wouldn't have been able to handle that, and I feel like God knew how I was going to react, and that He made a way for it to happen at somebody else's house, so that I wouldn't have to go through all that grief. And He also allowed. I have talked to mothers that their child hadn't passed yet, that spent 3 or 4 days in the hospital and then passed away in the hospital. I thank God every day that He didn't put me through that. My mother, my grandfather, and her husband had all moved down here looking for a place to live. They had only been here 11 days. We were out on the back porch playing Uno, and where my sliding glass door is, you can see right into where the front door is. And I was facing the front door, and I could see 2 police officers coming to the front door. And I was like, oh, are we being too loud back here? I thought maybe one of the neighbors I called because we had the music going. And I said, oh, police is here. So I went in and opened the door and asked them, how can I help you? And they said, are you Ariel Musiol's mother? And I said, yes, I am. And they said, can we come in? So they came in, and we went into the kitchen. And about that time, my mom had came in because she was wondering what was going on. And the male police officer, there's a male and a female, and he said, I'm sorry to inform you, but your daughter had passed away this morning. And this was probably about 7 o'clock at night. And so, I could just remember screaming. I can remember going into the bathroom screaming. And I just kept screaming no, and finally, probably, I don't know how long it was, but my mom came in and said, Angie, they've left. They gave me their card. They want to speak with you, but they just don't want to upset you any more than what you already am. Just take some time, and then when you're ready, come back out. So I just felt like it took hours to think about everything, about not, what, why. And I finally made it my way out. And it's really all a days, probably the first couple of weeks, because my girls called me, my other girls called me. I really didn't want to speak with them at that time. But then, my mom, I really believe that my mom was sent to me because I really just believe that God already knew He was going to take her, and He knew that, she was there. He had to get her there. She was only there 11 days before she had passed. And I had the help of my mom and my stepfather. They cooked for me. They mowed. All I wanted to do was just stay in the bed. And even my boss had to call and say, and talk to me. He was really nice. But, he said, Angie, he said, the best thing you can do is just get up and come back to work, and be around people that care about you, And he said, can we do that? And he said, can we at least give it a try? And I said, yeah. So I went back to work. I called these Ariel moments, So when I went back to work, I told my coworkers, I had one particular lady that was communicating with me, and she had called me, and she said, is there anything you need? And I said, Well, there is one thing. When I come back to work, I really would appreciate it if nobody just asked me about my daughter, because if they do, I know I'm just going to break down. And she's like, yeah, I'll get the message out. And so my first day back at work is about a month after it happened. I had some Ariel moments in the bathroom. And then, as weeks went by, you know, people say, does it get any better? Well, it does get better. And I don't think that you ever will forget, or you just kind of learn to live your life without him, And you're still going to I still have my Ariel moments, And there's still going to be times where I hear a song that maybe she sang, or hear a sign or something that she had said, or something post on Facebook that's years past, and it comes up as a memory. So, you're still going to have those moments, but life does get better. And one of the reasons I know this is because when I met my husband, we got married here on April 27th, the day that my daughter passed away. And the reason I picked that day is because I wanted that day to be a better day for me, to give me some happiness, and not always just be sad on the day that she passed away. I see moms on Facebook, and I see how sad it could be for them. And it's not that I'm not, that I don't remember on that day. It's just that, I was in my room one day and I was having an Ariel moment, and I felt like I heard Ariel saying, "Stop, Mom, stop." And I just believe that our kids, after a certain period of time, would not want you to go through all the pain that you put yourself through. And, I know my daughter loved me. She loved me with all her heart. In fact, my daughter died on a Saturday, and on Thursday, she asked me to bring her some money over. And she needed to pay she wanted to get a copy of her driver's license, and that she had lost, and she needed some help with paying her phone bill. So I brought the money over to her, and she come bopping out of the house in her little sundress, and she's all happy, because I was helping her. And I gave her the money. And I said, "Are you sure you're going to pay your cell phone bill?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Thank you, Mom." She said, "I love you." I said, "I love you too." And that's the last words that my daughter said to me. And so I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. Sometimes I just talk to her, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to go talk about you today." I was telling her that I'm getting ready to go and share her story. And it just dawned on me, I said, "You know what, you're going with me." And not as a punishment, but because I have watched most of your videos. And I felt like if I was going to make an impact, I wanted to make an impact so that people can see actually, what crazy woman brings her daughter in for an interview, And I wanted people to see that, permanent is permanent. There's no getting her back. There's no do-overs. There's no, that's what I have left. That's all I have left, except for the memories. Pictures I found are very important. After Ariel had passed and I started reaching out to several groups, I had several moms making me photos on Facebook, right? And I said, that's pretty cool, because every time I got a photo of her, I smiled, and it made me feel good. And I said, I want to do that for people. And so I started a Facebook group called Miss You Like Crazy, because her little saying was, when I tell her on the phone that I missed her, she said, "I miss you like crazy." So I named the group hashtag miss you like crazy, and I started to learn how to do these photos for these other moms. Thought I got pretty good at it. People were just smiling and thanking me, and it felt so good to help another mom out that was going through what I was going through. And it kind of took my mind off of my pain. And it made me feel good because I could help someone else out. And I did it for years. And, what made me start to slow down is that, every week I'd get another mom that had lost their child. And it just started getting overwhelming. In 2019, there was 197 people dying a day. And then, 3 years into it, it's almost up to 300 people. And it just started to get it so overwhelming because of the fact that it was the same thing over and over and over again. The stories were so similar to each other. The pain was identical. And I just felt like I needed to move on with my life, that I needed to get out of that and let another mother teach another mother how to do it so that that can help them cope with their pain, and then I can move forward down a different path. And so that's what I did. I started teaching a couple of moms in the group, and they started making all the pictures. I kind of backed out of it a little bit, and then I started doing other things with my life. And some of those things were I joined the American Legion Riders, and they were like family. And, they understood, my pain and they accepted me. If I cried in front of everybody just accepted me and I didn't feel like, that. And like I did in the past when I would talk to my coworkers, it felt like the people around me, they just didn't want to hear it, And it's not because they didn't want to hear it. It's just because they didn't know what to say, They just didn't understand the pain that I was going through, and it just made them uncomfortable to be around me. But then when I joined the American Writers, they didn't care, They said, just let it all out, And so they have really helped me. And so what I've done is last year was my first year. I organized a poker run to bring awareness to not just to fentanyl, but any overdose. There's a lot of people overdosing on other things other than fentanyl. And last year was my first poker run. I met a lady online, April, and together, we started coordinating Forever Angels of Brevard County and the American Legion together to make a poker run. We had 79 bikes. We raised money. We gave it to Circles of Care, which is a local treatment center. And we also, 50% of that went to them and 50% went to another local treatment center so that we can start helping those that are living, and not just, it's a memorial ride for those we've lost, but it is also to help those that are still trying to cope and get them through this addiction that they face every day. It's hard for me to talk about addiction because I don't know anything about addiction. I've never had that problem. And so all I can tell you is, after going through my daughter's phone, after going through all the letters, and she really didn't keep a journal. I wish she would have, but I just think that my daughter just got, hooked up doing the wrong thing one night, and she just didn't get a second chance the next morning. I can remember going to the funeral home with my mom. She's like, well, we got to go to the funeral home. We got to make arrangements. And I said, I just don't know. What do how do you plan your child's funeral? I mean, she's like, let's just go and see what they have to offer. So we get to the funeral home, and the director, he's a veteran, and he's a young guy, and he sits down and he says, so What was you thinking? Tell me what your thoughts are on how you would want to arrange for your daughter's funeral. And something just came over me. It was just like anger, And so I threw back at him, well, what does most parents do when their 19-year-old daughter dies? Fill me in. And he says, "Oh, whoa, whoa." He said, let's back up for just a minute. He said, let's start out by me asking you, what did your daughter like to do? And he said, tell me a little bit about her. Maybe I can help you out with this. And I told him, I said, well, I don't know. She liked to be on the beach. And he said, okay. And I said, the last photo I have of her, she was on the beach. One of the last conversations, I asked her where she was. She's like, I'm beachside, Mom. And she's all happy because she was getting to stay on the beach. And he said, well, why don't we just have it, why not just have a theme that it's a beach style? And then he started naming off all these different things he could do, He said, do you want formal? Do you want informal? I said, well, I don't think she would have liked, people coming in suits and all that. And he said, well, why don't we have it in beach attire? He said they can come in flip-flops and shorts and we'll just make it a beach theme. And so the whole funeral was done in a beach theme. We ate there right with her in the room. It was amazing. It was something that I would have never in a million years dreamed that I would have planned a funeral for my daughter in a beach theme. But, everybody that attended, and there was a lot of people that attended, everybody was just like amazed, like, this is so cool. And I felt like Ariel talked to me that day and said, you get me, Mom. Yes, I think that she would have approved. And it was beautifully done. It was beautifully done, but it was done in a way that everybody could come in and comfortable and still, be there for her last moments. I told you I have 4 girls, and Ariel was close with her sisters, but she was especially close with her sister Jessica. And Jessica had came down about 8 months before Ariel had passed. And, parents will say, did you see signs? Was there signs? I'm not going to lie to you. I did see some signs. I didn't think it was going to kill her, but I did know that Ariel would, occasionally smoke marijuana with her friends. But being here in Florida, a lot of her friends already had medical marijuana cards. And, I didn't really see, signs of what I thought were going to be drugs that were going to put her in the ground, And when my daughter had came down, she had, Ariel had spent a lot of her time away from the house and not with my daughter. So it kind of, it made Jessica wonder what was going on with her, and she's like, Mom, I'm really worried about her. And I said, well, she's fine. She just turned 18. She's out hanging with her friends, I mean, I know that you guys are close, but, she's made some new friends. And she said, well, I'm just going to tell you what I told her last night. I told her that I want the ring off her finger and the shirt off of her back. And I said, why? And she said, and Ariel asked her why, and she said, because when I come down here next year, you may not be here. That's how worried I am. And so the next year when her sister came down, went for her funeral, and the ring that she had taken from Ariel, she placed on her finger at the funeral home. And, her instinct was just right on. But, how it impacts a family is that her sister just felt so guilty that even to this day, I still feel like she has a hard time coping, with the loss of her sister. And even though I'm trying to move past, I feel like she tries to move past too. But like everybody grieves in their different stages. And I'm hoping, I'm trying to encourage her every day, to know that her sister loved her, and, and that it's not her fault. It's not her fault that what happened to her. But some people's guilt just takes a lot longer than other people's guilts, It comes in waves, I guess they say.